And so we see that we're dealing with a very different type of group here. And so I thought it was a very fitting place for us to go into this individual here. We call him Christopher Columbus, but his real name was Christopher Cologne. He was a small hat. These individuals, these whites who call themselves Jews but are not. And one of the real things I tell you is real interesting. They always talk about all the pain and the suffering they've gone through, but they never talk about the genocide that they've committed all across the world. And I used him in specific for a few reasons. One, black people, we have to do it. I said it before, I'm going to say it again. We got to start looking at quote-unquote homosexuality as something that's feminine. It's sex and aggression. In fact, it's one of the most aggressive acts that can be done, and you'll start to understand what I'm saying when you look at the character of the individuals. When you actually do the history and research, what you find is that the whites who have caused the most death and destruction on the planet, many of the key figures like this one right here, you find that some of the most aggressive individuals in the white race, they were blatant homosexuals. And so I want to talk about Christopher Cologne just for a moment, because he's a real key figure in the history of African people. And let's just talk just for a moment, just so you can see some of the atrocities that were committed against the red people in the Western Hemisphere. He didn't just come here and find something, no. He came to this side of the world and committed the worst forms of genocide that the red people had ever seen. They had never imagined something like this. Here you see a white male being tied to a pole with a dog, man-eating dogs that Columbus and his people brought in. There were other kinds of tortures. They would do what's called impaling. They would have these huge spikes coming out of the ground, and they would sit individuals down through their anus and have a spike come up through your head while you were still alive. And so a person could be there literally dying for a day or two. These are the type of things that Columbus and his other counterparts did to these individuals. Here's another one. These are the different types of tortures they had. You see here, they had these giblets. They would take wood and have wood on both sides, and in the middle, they would have something hanging. And then they would take 13 natives, and this picture is 13 of them, and hang them all on these things. And while they were doing that, in order to feed the dogs, you see the European male there, by Columbus's orders, they would take the children by the legs, the babies, and bang them against the trees until the blood gushed out of their heads, and then the blood was flowing so they could then feed them to the dogs.
That's what they did.
These are the kind of things that they did to us. These are the kinds of things that happened to the natives. These are the type of things that are in the psyche of the whites that we're dealing with. In particular, the ones we call homosexuals. Columbus was a small hat. That's one thing we want to make clear. So now whenever you hear the whites who call themselves Jews, you call them small hats. Now you know that they talk about the suffering they've undergone, but you know that they've created some serious suffering on planet Earth. He was a cold-blooded murderer. He was also a flaming homosexual. He wasn't just somebody who tried to sneak and do it. He was an outward homosexual. And he was a child molester and a child killer. In fact, Columbus stated in his personal logs that the native men aroused him and that he got great excitement out of watching them when they were naked. In fact, he said these were the most beautiful males that he had ever seen, and he had his way with them, quote unquote. Never mind the sex of the victim, it was just about who was the ravisher. He also made the natives turn over all of their children, boys and girls, under 12 years of age as sex slaves for his men. Those who refused were tortured and killed, and those who complied were generally tortured and killed later. So we understand the type of freakishness that was going on. These natives, the red people here had no idea what they were doing. No idea. And I use Columbus not just because of what he did to the natives, just because he's a homosexual, so-called homosexual, a white sex offender is what he is. But what he did to them is not very different than what's happened to us. And we're about to engage and embark upon a journey, and I just wanted to give you this background because we're going to try to make it more relevant to us as the people today, but in order to do that, we really got to deal with some strong territory, brothers and sisters. So I want everybody to sit there, and out of respect for your ancestors and love for your ancestors, I want you to sit through this. I want you to pay attention. Because you're going to realize and understand that we have gone through something as a people.
Yes, we have, bro.
They can very well explain where we are. See, a lot of times we look at our condition and go, what the heck are we doing out here? We're going crazy. But we don't know that we were made crazy.
That's right.
And so we're going to explore how we were made crazy. And I want you to watch this, because some of these are going to be graphic scenes, but I want you to understand that it's a process by which you take a black man and a black woman and then make them something other than who they are. And today we're going to deal with the sexual aspect of that. so we can understand. We're going to talk about this trip we call the Mayatha. This journey that we took unwillingly from Africa to America. And we're going to talk about the type of sexual, vicious crime